It is now my pleasure to introduce the first of two speakers who will do the induction of Mike David into the Indiana Golf Hall of Fame. Gary Myers retired in 2016 as CEO of Cokeline Development Corporation, the holding company for gasoline and convenience store retailer Cokeline Marketing, after being with the company for 42 and a half years. He served over 20 years on the Indiana Golf Association and Indiana Golf Foundation boards and was the IGA president during its centennial in 2000. He was the 2008 Indiana Golf Association Wagner Award winner and was instrumental in the development and construction of the Indiana Golf Office and the Gongower Junior Golf Academy in Franklin. Please welcome Gary Myers.
Well, thank you, Autumn. Thank you, everybody. I concur with the comment that was made by Mike Bell that it certainly is wonderful to be able to gather together and see a lot of familiar faces and have a chance to fellowship. I want to tell Mike that I consider it a huge honor to be asked by you to participate in your induction ceremonies tonight. And one would think that a person so honored would not begin tonight's induction ceremonies talking about a kind of an event in Mike's life that is maybe not his most favorable. It's kind of a traumatic event. Hope this doesn't open up some mental and emotional wounds. One would think I wouldn't do that, but in this case, one would be wrong. This event took place about 22 years ago. Mike found himself stranded on a deserted island. And it was a kayak kind of accident, lost his phone, ended up on an island, nobody there. He was there about a week. And I don't think many people in this room know about that event. It didn't make the Main Street media or anything. I mean, why would it? It's just Mike David. But does anybody remember? A couple people in the back there, maybe. But Mike was just this specific event that I want to talk about. Mike was sitting cross-legged on the beach of this island, close to the edge of the water, kind of contemplating his dilemma, and rather forlorn. And all of a sudden, he noticed something taking place in the water right out in front of him. It was kind of started to bubble and boil and churn, and he thought, "Wow, this." He jumped up and kind of startled, and all of a sudden, this creature started to emerge out of the water. And Mike really got concerned and kind of frightened. Then he took a few steps back, and the creature started coming closer and out of the water. And Mike fully realized then it wasn't a creature at all. This is a beautiful woman. And the woman was in a black, skin-tight wetsuit. And when I'm talking about a beautiful woman, I'm talking about a Bo Derek or a Farrah Fawcett type woman. And she started to keep coming closer and closer, and pretty soon now she's on the island. And by the way, don't think that I don't realize that I just really dated myself by saying Bo Derek or Farrah Fawcett, because those junior players over there are going to have to Google those names to find out who they are. But anyway, the creature now is up on the island, and Mike says, "Who are you?" And she responds, "Well, I'm your guardian angel, and I'm here to provide you comfort." And Mike thought, "This is good. This is really good. This is good news for me." And she said, "How long has it been since you've had something to drink, your favorite beverage?" He said, "Oh, I've been here about a week." So it's been about a week. And so she unzipped the sleeve of her skin-tight wetsuit and handed Mike his favorite beverage, and he just guzzled it down. He was so thirsty. And she then said, "How long has it been since you've had something really good to eat?" And he said, "Oh, it's been about a week." And so she unzips her other sleeve and hands him a big Reuben sandwich from Shapiro's, and one of Mike's favorite sandwiches. He started chomping on that and really hungry, and he's about to finish that up, and he looks up, and this creature now is pretty close to where he's standing, and she has this kind of unusual look on her face. And she took her hand and had it on the zipper of her skin-tight wetsuit top. Well, really for her, it was about out to here. And so she, she started to unzip it a little bit, and she looked at Mike and she said, "And how long has it been since you've played around?" And Mike, with all the enthusiasm of a young boy at Christmas time, yells out, "You mean you have golf clubs in there too?" Now, a lot of men wouldn't have thought of that answer to her. But see, a lot of men aren't Mike David. Mike David eats, sleeps, and breathes golf. Because when you're the executive director of the Indiana Golf Office, you serve 4 different boards of directors, and those board of directors total 63 men and women that are very successful in business. They have a high expectation of performance, and they have a high expectation of you, Mike David, to run the Indiana Golf Office. And then you lead an office of 11 people at Franklin that are professional and do a great job. And in the summertime, when the golf season is upon us, that group of 11 swells to include part-time, staffing, volunteers, and interns, because you have about 125 competitive events you have to run throughout the state of Indiana, from Warsaw to Fort Wayne, down to Evansville, to Terre Haute, all the way over to Richmond. And you have to do it at a very high level of success and execution. So Mike eats, sleeps, and breathes golf. And also the constituencies of your office include men and women amateurs throughout the state, PGA golf professional members, golf course owners, and it expands to include the Indiana High School Athletic Association, because the golf office runs and conducts the state high school championship for girls and boys, the NCAA, the USGA, coaches, parents, and the list goes on. Yes, Mike's focus is always on golf, it seems, because it needs to be. But in those rare instances when Mike's focus is not on golf, it's on his family. Because Mike has a wife of 34 years, Betsy, supportive wife, son Adam, daughter Amy, their spouses, and in recent times, the blessing of 2 grandchildren that have enhanced Mike and Betsy's life and family, and provides Mike a little bit of a diversion from the stresses and responsibilities of his office. And I'd like to call out for special recognition, Betsy, not so much for all the sacrifices you and the 2 kids had to put up with when Mike was fulfilling his important responsibilities for 30 years, when you would have liked to have had him in attendance at some of the functions, but not so much for that, but more so for what you've had to endure the last year with Mike working from home. Certainly worthy of high praise, right, folks? So how did we get here tonight? How did Mike get to the threshold of the Indiana Golf Hall of Fame? Well, it started out in Columbus, Indiana, where Mike was born and raised. And as with you, someone took you by your hand, took you to the golf course, placed a golf club in that hand, and your life was forever changed. For Mike, that was his father, Shirley. And Mike graduated from Columbus North High School in 1982. He lettered all 4 years in golf. He qualified for the state golf championship in each of those 4 years. And he was a 4-time all-conference selection. In 1982, Mike's North team finished second in the state. Mike placed top 10 and was an all-state selection. From high school, Mike matriculated up to Ball State University and became part of the very highly respected Cardinals golf team of Hall of Fame coach Earl Yestingsmeyer. Now, I thought for sure Mike had to be a walk-on because have you seen what he does with his putter and the shaft and how he grips it? Anyway, Mike assured me, no, he actually got a scholarship. And Mike did great things for Coach Estingmeyer's team up there. And he graduated in 1986. He majored in journalism. He was a 4-year letter winner, had 5 top 10 finishes in his career collegiately, and captained the team his senior year. Other playing accomplishments for Mike include a 4-time Columbus City champion, 4-time Harrison Lake Country Club champion, finished second in the 97 Ulen Open. He won the 98 Martinsville Fall Invitational in the playoff over Jamie Broche. Sorry about that, Jamie. And finished second in the 2008 Indianapolis East Side Amateur. He was also a member of the Indiana PGA 4-man team championship winner in 2017. So Mike can play. After college, Mike floundered around a few years. He was always looking for a job where he could work a little and play a lot. And he thought he found the perfect spot when he hired in at the golf office in 1990 as the assistant tournament director. We all know that Mike is the definition of a type A personality. He talks fast, he walks fast, he plays golf fast, and he can also process a lot of information quickly to reach solid decisions. So it's no surprise that Mike moved up to the top position in the golf office, the executive director, in less than 2 years. As a sidebar, the president of the IGA at the time of Mike's hiring was Hall of Fame member Jerry Nelson. You've heard that name mentioned a few times tonight. Jerry passed away just a few months ago and was a loss for all of us that had the pleasure of knowing him. It was Jerry that invited me to become the District 8 director for the IGA, also back in 1990. So I've known Mike throughout his 30-year career. In preparing for my remarks tonight, I called Jerry in February. I wanted to talk to him about the early years of Mike's career. Toward the end of that chat, Jerry told me a story of receiving a call from Mike asking if Mike could come up to visit with Jerry. And Mike did. Somewhere during that visit, Mike asked Jerry, do you have any idea why I'm here? And Jerry goes, I have no idea. And Mike said, well, Jerry, I wanted to personally thank you for hiring me back in 1990. Mike explained to Jerry that the position has been professionally fulfilling for him and that it provided a nice living for his family. Jerry was very touched that Mike would travel so far to deliver that personal thank you. During my call to Jerry, I asked if he planned to be here tonight and if I had his approval to tell that story. And he answered yes to both. I want to make sure that Jerry was represented in spirit tonight with that story. When Mike hired in at the golf office the golf office was in Carmel. In 1993, Ted Bishop extended a generous offer to the golf office to move to Franklin. And that provided us more space, free rent, and close access to a full-size golf course. In 1994, under Mike's leadership, the Indiana Golf Foundation was established, which provided IRS favorable tax benefits to donors, resulting in a lot more success in fundraising. Our junior golf program was placed under the foundation's structure and has grown from 10 events and 200 participants when it was founded in 1987 to 75 events and 1,100 participants now. The junior program uses a 3-tour structure designed by Mike David. Mike led the development of the foundation's academic scholarship program to provide financial assistance for students who actively participated in the junior tour and also had success in the classroom. Later, the David E. Simon Scholarship was created, which was open to any individual that works at a golf course. In 1999, more than $500,000 has been granted to college scholarships. With a focus on excellence for our junior program, Mike became aware of a junior golf academy that was part of Tennessee Golf House. Mike knew the executive director of the Tennessee organization, Dick Horton, well, and a site visit was set up, I believe, in '98. Todd Smith, representing the PGA section, Mark Inman, and myself, representing the IGA, staff members JJ and Mindy Spreitzer, accompanied Mike down to Nashville to have a look at this facility. Now, remember me stating earlier that Mike does about everything fast, given his type A personality? Well, he drives fast, too. Too fast. We got pulled over in Jeffersonville for speeding through a construction zone. Now, it's times like these when it's really good to have one of the state's best defense attorneys on your board and in your vehicle with you when you get pulled over by the police. Lawyer Inman grew up in Jeffersonville and offered to take Mike's case pro bono. We obviously liked what we saw at Tennessee, and the goal of building a similar facility in Indiana was launched. My 2-year term as president of the IGA included the groundbreaking for and the ribbon cutting of the Gongaware Junior Golf Academy, and I can attest to the vastness of such an undertaking. I give Mike huge amount of credit for the vision becoming reality as he managed all the various aspects of this major project. We had to hire an architect and inform them what we wanted him to design and fundraise. We had to hire a contractor to build it and fundraise. We had to order all the furniture, fixtures, and equipment and fundraise. We had to hire an academy director and help design the curriculum that they were going to teach the juniors and fundraise. You get the idea. Big project. And well done. Of course, the academy would not have been possible without the financial support of all of you in this room to make it happen. So let's give everybody a big hand. During the Academy's 17-year existence, the Gongaware Academy hosted nearly 5,000 youth. Now, approximately 11 years ago, and at the urging of Alice Dye, Mike led the efforts to bring the administration of the Indiana First Tee program under the Indiana Golf Foundation structure. At the time, First Tee programming was reaching about 6,000 youth in 2 communities, Richmond and Indianapolis. Today, First Tee Indiana has grown to 18 communities and is reaching an amazing 100,000 youth. Mike realized before any of us that it was time to move away from the owned and operated academy concept and really grow the First Tee program. We are much more successful taking the program out to where the kids are than asking them to come to Franklin. What is Mike like as a leader? Mike empowers others and has a leadership by values style for which we can all be proud and support, like the personal thank you visit to Jerry Nelson. I've worked a few tournaments over the years as an official that included Mike's college coach, Earl Yestingsmeyer. When it gets late in the day, Mike would come on the radio and inform Earl that someone was headed out to his zone to relieve him. I found out later that Mike wanted to get Earl home before dark so he didn't have to drive at dark. Mike cares about people. There was a young lady that worked at the golf office for a few years named Kristen Hunt. When she found out that Mike was going to be the recipient and inducted into the Hall of Fame, she wrote him a letter. I asked Kristen if she would mind if I read part of that letter, and she agreed. I think this letter represents a lot of the leadership style of Mike David. In part, the letter reads, There will be a lot of talk about what you've done for golf and the golf office. But I think it's important you know that your impact is so much greater than golf office accomplishments. As my boss, you gave me so much more than a job. You gave me guidance, confidence, and most importantly, friendship. You let me do things my way, and you allowed me to make a few mistakes. The way you support your employees and encourage them to grow is truly unique. I knew, and I still know, that I could count on you to support and guide me through any situation. You are the reason I enjoyed going to the office. I'm so happy for you, and I can't think of a more deserving person. Kristen Hunt. Excellence only exists in an environment of good communication. Mike is an excellent communicator, which allows his team to understand their roles and responsibilities, which allows them to execute at a high level of excellence. You remember me stating earlier about the 4 boards, the 63 board members, 11 full-time staff, and 125 events? 30 years, folks. No scandals, no lawsuits, and he's working with men, women, young, old, and parents. I have attended about 20 of these annual awards, Hall of Fame banquets. Every year, including this year, I've heard the award recipients thank and compliment Mike or his golf office staff. They note the professionalism and quality of the events. Mike and his team, the Indiana Golf All-Stars, I'm going to call it, that he has hired, they make it look easy, but I assure you, achieving excellence is never easy. I hope we all understand that Mike has had some other opportunities. Lots of people and organizations recognize his talent. Good people are hard to find, and Hall of Famers even more rare. But he stayed because he's loyal. It's been a blessing to me to share part of my life's journey with my friend Mike David. I have the utmost respect for Mike as a leader and administrator. The final chapters of Mike's story are not yet written, but when Mike's career is over, the record will show that thousands of Indiana youth were introduced to this magnificent game through the Junior Tour, the Gongaware Academy, and the First Tee programs. That more events were created for golfers to participate. That vast amounts of money, scholarship money, was raised and awarded for our youth to attend college. The Hall of Fame is about champions, and Mike is a champion for Indiana golf, and we are the beneficiaries of his excellence. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Ted Bishop. Ted is a native Hoosier, currently director of golf and general manager of the Legends of Indiana. Ted was the 97-98 Indiana Section PGA president and voted Indiana PGA Golf Professional of the Year in 1998. Ted was elected to the National PGA Board in 2006, went through the various chairs you go through to get to the top spot, and was elected to serve as the 38th president of the PGA of America. He was inducted into the Indiana Golf Hall of Fame in 2013. Please welcome my friend, Ted Bishop.
Thanks, Gary. Great job. Before I start, there's a couple things I want to clarify. Teddy Bishop and I are not related, and she is definitely the best player of the two of us, which many of you will attest. But like Gary, I cannot tell you how honored I was to get the phone call from Mike to ask me to do this tonight. Believe me, there are a lot of other PGA professionals who are in the room here tonight who certainly could have done this job as well or better than what I'm going to do. And what I'm going to try to do in the remarks that I make is hopefully represent all the PGA professionals that, Mike has done such a great job for over the years. And I would say this, I've been to a few of these, and I have never seen as many former Hall of Fame members in attendance as I saw here tonight. And I think that is a tremendous tribute to the man that we're going to induct into the Indiana Golf Hall of Fame here. No question about that. And I know that you and your family have waited for this night for quite a while, so it's finally here. I was on the Indiana PGA board in 1990 when we hired Mike as the assistant tournament director. And I was also around a couple years later when we elevated him to the position of executive director. So, like Gary, my relationship with Mike dates back some 30 plus years. We've also been neighbors at the Legends Golf Club since 1998. And, I always have taken great pride in the fact that for several decades, golf in Indiana was centered in Franklin. And, I've had access to Mike on a daily basis. And that has been a real blessing for me and probably more of a curse to you. But, I have really appreciated that. And I'm not sure I understood the full magnitude of having that access when, when we constituted that deal in the beginning. But, it's great. You heard from Gary about many of Mike's accomplishments over the years. And, I would say that the very reason that this induction ceremony took so long, COVID, probably presented Mike David with his finest moment in golf, at least from my perspective, having lived and worked and been in golf my whole life in Indiana. And I want to stand here before you tonight and say, had it not been for Mike David in 2020 and the dialogue that he had with the governor's office, I'm not sure that we would have had the year that we had last year. And I think at this point, we need to give Mike David a tremendous round of applause for that. Mike has been, he's helped champion PGA members, from an employment club relations standpoint, really his entire career. And for those that don't know what PGA club relations and employment means, anytime a job opens in the Indiana section, there's always, some dialogue, and it's changed a little bit because the PGA of America is now more involved, and that's what Todd Smith does a great job of today. But back in the day, before the PGA created that national department, the job of helping set up jobs fell upon usually Mike David, Doug Booth before me, and me for probably 10 years. And Mike and I, we traveled to every possible nook and cranny in the state of Indiana to set up jobs for golf professionals. Big jobs, small jobs, 18-hole jobs, 9-hole jobs. And I can tell you that there was never any greater champion for PGA professionals than Mike David was. And Gary, I too have a driving story. We were coming back from a job at the Muscatatuck Country Club. It was a mild February night, and we were on State Road 7, and Mike had a green Bronco, and we hit a deer. And, the deer knocked the headlight out and did some damage to the grill. Fortunately, the vehicle was salvageable, and we were able to limp back to Franklin. And, when this happened, we actually got out of the vehicle and we walked back 50 yards or so looking for the deer because we saw the deer go back over the top of the vehicle. And I'll never forget this. The next morning, it was kind of cloudy, drizzly day, and Mike pulls up in front of the overhang at the Legends, and he says, "You've got to come out and see this. You are not going to believe this." And I go out there, and the back of this Bronco, I know you remember this, it looked like someone had airbrushed deer hair all over the back of that Bronco. And to this day, I still do not understand how that happened. But but we had a lot of good times, and it was serious work. And but it was fun. It was a lot of fun, which would really characterize my relationship with Mike over the years. And when I was elected president of the PGA of America in 2013, one of the first appointments that I made was to make Mike David the chairman of the Executive Directors Committee, which meant that he would attend all of our national PGA board meetings, and he would be the liaison between the PGA officers and the PGA of America board and his other 40 counterparts. And a few months after that appointment took place, the PGA of America had the good fortune to extend their Ryder Cup television rights with NBC to the tune of $440 million. And so we had a tremendous influx of cash. And one of the things that the PGA of America wanted to do was basically share the wealth with the sections. So I remember having a conversation with Mike, and I asked him, I'm like, what's the best thing, that we could do? And since that time, to put this into financial perspective, there's been between 20 and $25 million probably that's been distributed back to sections in increases in ADP money. But the key thing that Mike said was, let the sections decide how they want to use the money. Don't tell the sections what to do. And you know what? It was a tremendous bit of wisdom, because having the money was great. That would be one thing. But to give all 41 sections in the country, which are all totally different, the ability to use that in a way that it best suited them was tremendous advice. And that would kind of go along with some of the things that Gary was saying about Mike's vision. Mike is the only honorary member in the history of the Indiana PGA. And that happened because Todd Firestone and Tony Pancake, had the foresight to make it happen. And the ironic thing about that is that Mike was actually in the golf business. He lasted, I think, one day as the assistant pro working for BG Winings at Hillview Country Club. That's a fact. Was it one day? It was 2 months. Okay. You know how these stories, they get better. Yeah, he said it was an eternity. But 2 months, he was one of us, and then a few years later, basically, he's helping us run our association. But, in Mike's job, he really does have a lot in common with golf professionals. As Gary said, he's served many boards and board members over the last 3 decades, which a lot of us have done. And he certainly encountered big personalities, big egos, and big pains in the butts. There's no question about that. But over the years, Mike has learned how and figured out how to survive. And I'd say more importantly, he's probably been able to outsmart a lot of the people that he worked for. And most of the time, he got the things done that he wanted to get done. But when I say that, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I want to emphasize that his agenda was and always has been about the betterment of golf in Indiana. And I would venture to say that he had a very unique and different relationship with all of us that had the privilege to serve with him as an IGA or a PGA president. And I would say that you could talk to any of the people that have done that, any of the other associations, and we would all look back at those years and we would say that Mike David was the consummate team player. And Gary specifically mentioned Mike's leadership style, which, really in my opinion is why we're here tonight. Let's face it, his putting stroke has never been of Hall of Fame caliber, then that's not going to change. But the things that stand out to me about Mike and his leadership style are this: he was always prepared, he was always thorough, and he was always respected. Always respected. When he talked in the boardroom, people listened. Mike could steer the boardroom. He was a great table setter. He did all of his preparation before board meetings, and it allowed us to get things done. He was an efficient leader who, trust me, hates long meetings. Okay, we got things done in a pretty short period of time. But Mike was a tremendous consensus builder. And I thought this was funny. At the state tournament a few weeks ago, I was talking to Doc O'Neill, and we were talking about Mike and his leadership abilities. And Doc did add this: Mike can also be stubborn and hard-headed. And I think that's true, too. I would say that Mike has mellowed with age. In his younger days, believe me, he never shied away from a fight, but he's mellowed with age. And I would say that really the younger Mike was a lot more fun at times, particularly when it came to PGA matters. Gary mentioned Mike's affinity with the rules of golf, and I've had Mike on speed dial for rulings for years. And every time I call, if he doesn't answer, he calls me right back, and that's even true nowadays when you can hear his grandkids, in the background. But, the thing that always impressed me, and this has never changed, is that, Mike not only gives me the answer that I'm looking for with a lot of enthusiasm and passion, but it's the energy in which, he gives you the ruling, and you can just tell that rules of golf are what Mike David lives for. And, someone once said that Mike David enjoys the rules of golf more than, well, only Betsy can answer that, but in a lot of ways, I will say this, and this is a great compliment. Mike reminds me of Mike Davis, the USGA executive director who recently retired. And I say that because both are very competent golf administrators, but I also think that both would much rather be working a golf tournament and giving rulings than sitting in an office answering phone calls. And to this day, I think that Mike would agree that tournaments and rules are probably the thing that he enjoys most about his job. Crystal Morse and I coached the Franklin boys and girls high school teams, and this spring I actually called Mike to confirm a ruling that I gave in the Mid-State Conference boys tournament. And I did this because another coach was questioning the ruling that I gave. So I called Mike, and he verified my ruling, and I informed this young coach from Plainfield that Mike David says that I gave you the correct ruling. And he replied, well, who is Mike David? True story. And the next day, I thought a lot about that. And, obviously, everybody here tonight knows who Mike David is. Any club official or tournament player in the state would know Mike. But the thousands of people who play golf casually in Indiana probably really have no clue who Mike David is. And they never heard of Mike David because, in my estimation, his greatest leadership quality is leading from the background and letting others take the credit. Mike, as Tony said in his invocation, has never sought the limelight. Trust me, he's not afraid of it, but he would prefer to stay under the radar, and that's who he is. And, I thought a lot about this, and, Gary mentioned his dad, and I think that quality is an inherited David trait. I know a lot of the members of the David family. I know Mike's brother Steve very well, and they all operate like that. And it's because of the influence of Cheryl David, Mike's dad, who was the family patriarch. And when Cheryl retired, Mike actually came to me, and he got his dad a job at the Legends as a cart guy. And I have to honestly tell you that Cheryl was with me for several years before I was aware of the fact that he was a decorated bomber pilot in World War II, and he later worked in the Pentagon, participating in presidential briefings with Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Johnson. So it's a David thing, and that might be their most effective tool. They never bang their own drum. And I would bet that being inducted into the Indiana Golf Hall of Fame may never have meant more to anyone than it does to Mike David, other than Cheryl David, who's beaming down from heaven tonight with a smile. In closing, I have to selfishly say this. You all know the golf office is leaving Franklin. It's moving to the Fort. And I've got a lot of fond memories of that office, particularly Mike's office. He and I plotted and planned many PGA of America and Indiana section ideas there. As I said, I'm gonna miss that access to you greatly. I never took it for granted. Certainly had no idea how valuable it would be to me personally when the golf office moved to Franklin. But I hope that you know how much that I have enjoyed what has to be hundreds of impromptu meetings that I've laid on you over the past 4 decades. Mike David has been a special friend to all of us, everybody in this room. But he's been the best friend that Indiana golf may have ever had. That's his legacy, and that's why we join him tonight in this great celebration. Congratulations, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike David.
Person that has the microphone last gets to set some things straight. So before I get to my speech, there's a couple fact checks that we need to go over. First of all, Gary Myers did not write any of my jokes tonight. Secondly, the speeding ticket was correct, but Mindy Spreitzer, who was in the car with us, after I get pulled over, and Mark Inman's there, and we'll take care of it, blah, blah, blah. Cop leaves, and Mindy looks at me and said, "I saw people coming from the other way flashing their lights. Thanks for telling me that, Mindy. Great." And the deer went under the car, not over the car, but it was still pretty significant. One quick story about Ted, and then I'll get into my speech, is that Randy Nichols, great amateur player in Indiana, won the state amateur at the Legends. And Ted wanted to go over to Randy's bar in Connorsville and present him with a plaque and make him a lifetime member of the Legends. So we go over there, and he gives him a framed print of Arnold Palmer. And this was probably 15 or 20 years ago. Let me tell the story. I've got the mic down. So the plaque is there. I think you're right. I did give him that. You gave him the lifetime membership. But the plaque's sitting in the booth, and one of the waitresses keeps walking by, and she finally looks at the picture of Palmer, who was probably 75 at the time, and Ted was 55 when we went over there. She looks at the print, she looks at Ted, she looks at the print, she looks at Ted, and she goes, "Is that you?" All right, so that's a true story, right? So now I'm going to get into the speech, okay? Tonight I become the 107th inductee into the Indiana Golf Hall of Fame. But no one in the history of the Hall of Fame has had longer to write an acceptance speech than I have. 3 save the dates, 586 days, 7 hours, and roughly 13 minutes. Hopefully it doesn't stink. I had 3 people read my speech in advance. 2 said it was good. The other, who is a professional speechwriter, said I needed to cut some of it. I apologize to all of you in advance for not taking his advice. All I'm asking is that you give me 18 seconds for every year I've worked for Indiana Golf. I'm not a big fan of surprises, and while I hide it very well, I'm a bit of a control freak. Lots of laughing from staff tables. I knew going into tonight that I should be prepared for not having control and for whatever surprises might be in store, and I simply could not have prepared for this. The turnout tonight is certainly just something I never thought would happen. And while I'm not overly comfortable in a setting recognizing me, I do appreciate the work that Autumn and the entire golf office staff put into tonight, to my family for the effort they put into tonight, to Gary and Ted and any others that were involved. Before I get to my comments, I want to first of all congratulate our 2020 Players of the Year. As Autumn already stated, hearing acceptance speeches from our Junior Players of the Year is always a treat, and it really proves that our junior programs are turning out good golfers, but more importantly, they're turning out quality young men and women, and that's why we run them. To Jim Rowan, our Wagner Award winner, I've known Jim for over 30 years now. I was there when that putt went in on number 18 at South Bend Country Club. He's always been a pleasure to be around. Golf is a game of integrity and sportsmanship. To win the Wagner Award means that you truly stand out from the rest, and Jim is a very fitting winner of that award. I want to explain why I asked Gary Myers and Ted Bishop to tag team on my induction speech. Of course, there's a whole IGA PGA theme that both of them were presidents of their respective associations, but there was a little more thought put into that. I've known Ted for the 30 plus years that I've been with the golf office. Ted has a tremendous passion for the game and the PGA. His work ethic is difficult, if not impossible, to match. As many of us know, he has strong convictions for what he believes, which I think I fall into that category as well. Our involvement with Indiana Golf kind of shared the same time period. He was on the Indiana PGA board when I was hired, as he mentioned. I was with him as his involvement in the game grew at the section level and then to the national level. We've traveled together, we've attended meetings together, we've spent hours upon hours discussing various local, state, and regional golf-related issues. He has played a major role in my professional development and has had a huge hand in shaping golf in Indiana. I've known Gary Myers for over 40 years. I first got to know him when I played in the Otter Creek Men's Club events when I was a teenager. And then I obviously worked with him when I got this job as he was an IGA board member, eventual president of the IGA, and a foundation board member. Gary was then and continues to be today a very important mentor to me. He is always there when I call him to address an issue, and somehow makes me think that I solved the issue on my own, which I know that wasn't the case. I should say to a large degree my golf life and career has kind of taken the same steps as my relationship with Gary. I started playing at a very young age. Then I went to the collegiate level. I developed a passion for the game, and I had the opportunity to turn it into a career. Golf has largely shaped my life and has led me to numerous relationships similar to the ones I have with Gary and Ted. So thank you to both very much for doing my induction tonight. I should have prefaced my comments by saying that I'm much better at handing out awards than I am at receiving them, especially when we're talking about induction into the Indiana Golf Hall of Fame. When I look at the names of Pete Nalistye, Fuzzy Zeller, Tom Meeks, Kent Franson, Gary Gant. Oh, wait, okay, that was a bad example, but you guys get the idea of what I'm trying to say. Yes, sir. Mr. Gant, yes, sir.
A good joke of this is that every meeting we had at the PGA, I'd always raise my hand, and poor Mike would go, "Oh God, what's he going to say?" But I just want to thank him. If I can keep it together here. I got my daughter, daughter, my grandkids. They all play golf. My kids all got scholarships to play in college for free. That was a very good thing. And it's all because of him. Starting out these programs with these junior golf and you kids, and I see these kids coming up. I mean, it's just exciting, and when I heard you were going to Hall of Fame, I called all my kids and said, we're getting down there for sure. You are just outstanding human being. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. So, paying back everyone that stands up and speaks tonight, I'll tell a story about Gary. So I was officiating the U.S. Senior Open at Belle Reve in St. Louis, and Gary had qualified as a player, and I took Adam, my son, over with me. And he was probably 11 or 12 at the time, and he was getting autographs, and he had a hat with Arnold Palmer's autograph, and I don't remember who else, and Gary came walking up. I'm like, hey, go get an autograph from that guy. So Adam runs over, gets the autograph, he comes back, he goes, Dad, who was that? I said, it's Gary Gant, Adam, come on, you don't know who that is? But in all seriousness, I have a hard time believing that I deserve a spot next to those other individuals in the Hall of Fame. I feel like I've made a career out of hiring really, really good people and stealing others' ideas for the most part. If I look at what I think are the best things that we have done over the last 30 years, I would say the Junior Tour, which I inherited, forming the Indiana Golf Foundation, which we copied off of Tennessee, forming the Gongware Junior Academy, again, copied off of Tennessee, or the First Tee of Indiana, which basically fell on our lap thanks to Alice Dye. It's tough for me to believe that I've had a Hall of Fame career. More accurately, it has been a lot of being in the right place at the right time with the right people. There are, however, some Hall of Fames that, if they existed, I feel like I would be a candidate for. If there was a Hall of Fame for having supportive and dedicated board members, I would certainly be in that Hall of Fame. For the last 30 years, my estimate is that I've worked with over 460 total board members. I've had roughly 50 board presidents from the IGA, the IGF, the PGA, the IWGA, and the IGA-PGA combined. I really wanted to do a top 10 list, but there is simply no way to recognize the top 10, 20, or even 30 board members who I've had the pleasure of working with over the years. Many are in the room tonight, and I'm afraid if I started naming names, someone would be left off, and I don't want to run that risk. I can, however, name the 5 worst, and I'm going to do that right now. I'm only kidding. There were only 3, and they know who they are. I do need to recognize one past president out of the 50, whose name's already been mentioned tonight. I remember 32 years ago sitting on Todd DeHaven's back deck as he was grilling dinner, and he mentioned that the IGA had a new president, and I should reach out to him because, as a close friend of mine, Todd knew I had no clue what I wanted to do in life at that point in time. And I had reached out to the prior president and sent him my resume, and basically he responded back with very little hope of ever thinking about hiring me and wanted me to do a 5-10-year goals. I didn't know what I wanted to do the next day, let alone 5 to 10 years down the road. So I kind of let that go. But the IGA had a new president 31 years ago, and he took the time to look at my resume, listen to several phone calls from Todd DeHaven and Dave Shoemaker and Earl Yestingsmeyer, and recommended that Liz Cooprider, who was running the association at the time, give me an interview and consider me for a position. That person is Jerry Nelson. Jerry was one of the nicest, most genuine people I have ever known, and largely due to him, I was given an opportunity to start a career that has meant so much to me. If there was a Hall of Fame for having passionate, caring, and totally dedicated coworkers, I would most certainly be in that Hall of Fame. I think I've had roughly 45 coworkers over the years. Many, actually most, have become close friends. And I know that Management 101 would not advocate being friends with your employees, but I've never thought of anyone who has worked for me as an employee. We spend so much time together that they are part of my family. And honestly, any award that I could ever achieve doesn't add up to the note from Christine that Gary read earlier. Most of the success that Indiana Golf has seen over the last 30 years has been as a result of having boards and staff who were all committed to common goals and worked together to achieve them. Cooperation has definitely been the key to our success, and many in the room tonight have had a hand in that journey. Finally, if there was a Hall of Fame for having a supportive, caring, and loving group of family and friends, I would most certainly be in that Hall of Fame. My dad and brother-in-law gave me my love for the game. I started by going to the course with my dad and literally riding on his pull cart. Pull cart's the correct term. Back then they had 2 wheels and you pulled them, you did not push them. So I would straddle his clubs and occasionally grab an iron and pretend it was a gun and play Army. Sometimes I'd even hit a shot on a par 3 here and there. It's amazing that he ever hit a good shot because all his clubs had to be slightly bent by me sitting on them. Dad also gave me a strong sense of family and a solid work ethic. My mom also gave me a strong sense of family, my love of animals, and both contributed to my sense of humor. I was what you might call a perfect storm. I'm 6.5 years younger than my nearest sibling in age, so I was a combination of the youngest child and an only child. That's not a good combination. I'm actually fortunate my brother, sisters, and brother-in-laws allowed me to grow up, but fortunately they did allow me to grow up and have all had a hand in shaping who I am today. Finally, to the 3 people who spent a very long time as the most important people in my life. That number has recently grown by the addition of their spouses and 2 grandchildren who might have elevated themselves to the top of the list, but we won't do any rankings there either. Betsy has tolerated my numerous quirks for 34, almost 35 years of marriage now. Though early on, I didn't think we would ever make it to this point. As I mentioned, the career choices, I had 6 jobs the first 4 years out of college. So it's fairly remarkable I made it someplace for 31 years after that. I will say that all of the moves were completely by choice. However, they were not all seen as totally positive by her or her family for that matter. I put quite a damper in our rehearsal dinner when I quit my job the day before our wedding. True story. You can fact check that one, but it's true. That was the end of my 2 months at Hillview. In the end, she has always supported me and has been a tremendous mom and now grandmother. She should be in the Teachers Hall of Fame for 33 years of educating our youth, which is, yeah. Which is much bigger of an accomplishment than anything that I've done. To Adam and Amy, clearly the biggest success and the one I am most proud of is how they have turned out and the selection they made of their life partners, Ty and Lindsay. The pride I have with receiving this award doesn't match the pride I have for them every single day. We are friends as well as family, and that is no doubt Betsy and my biggest accomplishment. Golf is unique. When talking to potential donors, frequently we ask the question, what other sport do you call penalties on yourself? There simply aren't very many. But it is also unique in its ability to provide lifelong relationships and friendships. Really, there's no other sport that gives you the opportunity to bond with both teammates and competitors alike, as does the game of golf. There are over 15 people in the room tonight who I'm not related to, but I've known for over 40 years. There's another 52 in the room tonight that I'm not related to, that I've known for over 30 years. Golf has, in some way, enabled those relationships to be sustained. Arnold Palmer said it best, "It is without a doubt the greatest game mankind has ever invented." In closing, I'm honored to be selected to join an illustrious list of individuals. I've had the tremendous opportunity to work in a sports industry that I deeply love, for people I respect and admire, and with people who I'm fortunate to call my friends. I've listened to my brother make a couple of speeches, and what stuck out to me was his desire to throw in some quotes from country music lyrics, and I'm not a huge country music fan, so I thought I'd end tonight with my favorite quote. "Some people are like slinkies, not really good for anything, but you still can help, or they still can bring a smile to your face when you push them down the stairs." Wait a second. I'm sorry, that actually is my favorite quote, but highly inappropriate for tonight. Let me try a Steve Jobs quote instead. "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work." Thank you all very much.
Okay, normally this is the time where we say thank you for coming, safe travels, award winners, pictures in the back. Also underneath the awards table is the box if you want to take your award home in the box. But just one more thing before the night ends. And I know the best gift I could give to Mike is to wrap this up in 2 minutes, so I'm going to do that. Also, someone took my notes, I think, so. So I'll call on Noah, who's had a public speaking class, to wrap this up. So obviously the golf office staff is really biased this year with the Hall of Fame inductee. You're hard to shop for. That's why we played a little video for you earlier, but we did get you a gift, and a couple people that I want to thank first. First of all, Ted Bishop, who made this gift possible. He happens to be friends with the Tom Watson. So, and I wish I could say he was going to walk through the room, but he's not here. But the next best thing, he had Tom write you a letter just congratulating you on your 30 years. And we got it framed. And thank you to Ryan. This letter literally touched the hands of 10 people before it got framed. It went overnight to Georgia and back, so we're happy to have it. So a gift from the staff. So if the current staff want to stand up just to like help recognize this gift, but if you want to come up and grab it, we have something for your new office when it's finally built. I'm just going to end with one nice thing about Mike, just one, because I'll still make it quick. But just to say that, like, how much I've grown personally and professionally is because of you. And that's why I just said one thing. But yeah, thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Mike, on behalf of the staff, for being an absolutely amazing boss. Safe travels, pictures in the back for award winners by the banner, and thanks everyone for coming.